Last week at Circuit de la Sarthe, we saw a fantastic race which saw VRS Queen Sim Sport driver Rocco Barone come away with a comfortable victory. But 1 week and one balance of performance update later, the Blancpain Sprint Series comes to Elkhart Lake at Road America. Join us in just a few minutes time on iRacing Live and RaceSpot TV as we kick off coverage of 40 minutes here at the circuit in Wisconsin. Welcome back to RaceSpot TV and iRacing Live as qualifying is currently underway in your Blancpain Sprint Series. Randy Chan is in the booth, joined by Connery Maddock. Hugo Louise, as always, working the cameras. And Connery, it's been an interesting week for GT racing thus far. Balance update for these GT3 machines, and because of that, we're seeing a lot of Mercedes out on track right now. A lot of discussions about balance of performance, but I think it's still a little early. You got Le Mans this weekend, and a lot of people are putting a lot of focus on that.
Oh yeah, definitely. This new change that iRacing have brought to these GT3 cars will definitely shake things up a little bit. In the past season or so, we've had the Audi dominance at most tracks, so hopefully this will bring some different cars to the front of the field this time. I'm just looking at the field. There's a full 30 cars out there qualifying right now, and the field is stacked with names you perhaps more often than not see in the Blancpain GT series that just finished, with VRS Queen Sim Sport taking the win of that particular series. You have Alexia Loma, Riley Preston, Timo Raven, and Jack Sedgwick, just a few of the names here today.
It's a pretty stacked field, like you said, and first round of times are starting to come in. Ricardo Castroledo currently on provisional pole with a 2:04.2, the Radical Sim Sport driver. Of course, we wanted to put in a strong time, and actually Frederick Rasmussen comes through with a 2:04.5, and Frederick Connery is someone who is so strong in the early stages of this championship. We saw him, I think it was the first 3 to 4 rounds, all in a row that he took pretty single-handedly. No one really challenged him that much, except for maybe Dennis Grabowski, the curb surface driver. However, Fred, we're looking like he's not quite up to speed in this Merc right now. A lot of people driving it who are not used to seeing in the Mercedes. Castroledo is normally an Audi driver. Frederick, I know from the past, from talking with his teammates, he's never been a big fan of the Mercedes. Prefers the front-engine car, but specifically the BMW. Really, I think the best non-Mercedes in qualifying we have right now is 6th place Dennis Grabowski in that curb surface McLaren.
Yes, indeed. And currently on provisional pole, it is Ricardo Castroledo in that Mercedes car. So the top couple of Mercedes, as you say, the top 5 currently in qualifying, as qualifying's underway, are all Mercedes cars. So Mercedes have really benefited from this balance of power change. So as you say though, Frederick Rasmussen, he's currently not provisional pole. Ricardo Castroledo beat him to that by about 0.3 of a second. He's on his second lap now of Frederick Rasmussen. He's just coming up to the kink, I believe. So let's see what he can do here.
Coming now down through Bill Mitchell Bend and into the final corner here at Road America. It's a relatively tight right-hander for Ricardo Castroledo, and getting the power down out of this corner is always important. You want to get the car to rotate but not run too wide. Ricardo did a great job getting a good run out of that corner, and he's not backing out of it, so something tells me this lap's going to be even quicker. Going to come across the line, and he won't go quicker, so it's going to be, wait. Nope, didn't go quicker. 204.6, so 410 still off for Ricardo Castrolato. Frederick Rasmussen's now coming off the final corner. Let's see what he's going to be doing here. He's not backing out of this one, but I think these guys maybe just getting themselves a little oriented with the weather. Normally we'll see people just run the first hot lap, especially in this series. He will go quicker, but not quick enough. He's going to hold on to second place. Ricardo Castrolato currently holds on to pole position by 0.2 of a second, and let's quickly run down, you guys, some of the BOP changes we've seen this past week. All of the cars received aero adjustments. The way the cars react to ride heights with the aerodynamics changes a little bit, and that pretty much covers all 5 cars. The BMW and the Audi are arguably the 2 cars that got the biggest changes. The BMW received a bit of weight to try to get some more tire wear into that machine, but in addition, it picked up a little bit more horsepower, as well as it got a little bit more downforce to compensate to bring some of the lap times back into it. The Audi as well lost a little bit of the top-end torque, and that car, because of that, is suffering. Right now, it's a little early stages to really talk about the balance of performance, because this is sort of, Connery, arguably in some ways the worst possible week for a BOP update to come out, because you figure you have, you know, the Blancpain GT Championship just ended, so a lot of people are taking breaks. And it's the week before, or the week of the Le Mans 24, so there's a lot of teams putting a lot of effort into that race, and these GT3 machines aren't going to be running at Le Mans, so because of that, not quite the full force of testing going out just yet.
No, not just yet, and it'll be interesting to see how your drivers deal with these new changes that iRacing have brought to the GT3 cars. Your highest place Ford GT, actually, if you're a fan of the Ford GT, is Alexei Loma in 10th, so that is a pretty good place for Ford GT. Ford GT obviously not preferred with your drivers, but it's good to see one running up as far up as that, and the highest place BMW is actually Philippe Pavia in 17th.
Yeah, even though it is definitely a lot of Mercedes out there in the field today, there is still a good number of some of the other cars, and some of them are running well. And of course, can't forget that McLaren, driven by Dennis Grabowski, in 8th position in qualifying. And now let's take you down your starting grid for your Blancpain Sprint Series here at Elkhart Lake, Road America. Ricardo Castrolato puts that Radicals machine on pole with a 204.2, with Frederick Rasmussen, the course sim racing driver, on outside of the front row with a 204.4. Row number 2 is going to be Riley Preston and Andrea Rodriguez, with Miko Milkila and Timo Ivnen rounding out row number 3. Zach Thomas and Dennis Grabowski, that's row number 4, with Guillem Escuder Heredia and Alexei Aloma rounding out row number 5. Ricardo Ferreira and Dado Opkak, row number 6, with Jack Sedgwick and Jorge Blasco Valls, row number 7. Row 8, Marco Acunto and Joni Heikkinen, with Felipe Paiva and Gianna Vicio, row number 9. Claudio Pineda and Jan Sentkowski, row 10, with row number 11, Christoph Mueller and Jake Hewlett. Simon Fiegel and Marcus Mayer, row number 12, with Julian Offret and Torben Sauthoff, row number 13. Row 14, FM Riviera and Chip Disarun, with Dan Herron and Kenner Basal rounding out row number 15, the last row of the field. It's a long outlap here, Connery, so we got a lot of time to fill here. What's your opinions on these? Actually, let's get a pick. Fred has been strong, but Ricardo, I think for the first time, this is the first time we've seen anyone out-qualify Fred. Who do you think is going to come away with the win here? Do you think it's going to be Rasmussen, or do you think Castrolato is going to be strong in that Merc?
I think this time Rasmussen will be, Castrolato will be able to give Rasmussen a run for his money during this race. If that qualifying time is anything to go by Castrolato, if his race pace holds up, he can definitely have a shot at the win. He's about a 10th faster on the qualifying lap there. So I'd say probably Rasmussen still getting the win, but he will be challenged.
Now let's talk about some of the strategy here, Connery, because of course the race is going to be relatively simple, relatively straightforward. 40-minute race, you have to come down pit road, you will definitely be taking fuel, definitely not be taking tires. That 25-second tire change simply takes too long, but let's talk about specifically with this circuit at Road America. Long straights, because of that you're getting a lot of draft, and we saw this at Le Mans last week as well. because of that, there's a lot of opportunity to save fuel. So you might be able to be in a situation where, let's say you're Frederick Rasmussen, if you can just slot in behind Ricardo Castrolado, and if he's not holding you up very much, it is beneficial to just slot in behind him and sit there until the pit stop stops, save gas as much as you can, and get yourself a shorter fill.
Oh yeah, of course. Just fuel saving like that, it really helps you in the stop because you don't have to take as much fuel. Even if you don't go an extra lap than everyone else, you've still got more fuel in the tank, and it's going to take less fuel to fill up to the end there. As we're coming on the run down from turn 3 down into turn 4, I believe, right here, Randy. It's a downhill braking zone into here, so you're going to have to brake a little bit earlier than you think and a little bit harder than you think coming down into this turn. It could be a trouble spot.
Yeah, this is technically, if you look at a circuit map, that's turn 5, but as people are well aware, there's a couple places on this circuit where they put turns and there's really not a turn there. So it's realistically actually turn number 3, and like you said, bit of a downhill braking zone. Because of that, I actually think it's the best passing opportunity on the racetrack, but this circuit has several fantastic places to make moves. Turn 1, turn 3 are places you can make issues happen. Turn number 5, you can force it side by side there. Turn number 8, which is where they're actually coming up on right now. It's a short run, but if you're quicker, you can slot it up the inside here. And as well, of course, going into Canada Corner is another fantastic place as well. But this long right-hander they're about to come up on, Connery, this is one of the unique challenges of this racetrack, because this, to me, is a corner where it's always difficult to really figure out what the car wants to do. Sometimes the car will oversteer, sometimes the car will understeer, sometimes one gear will feel quicker, sometimes another gear will feel quicker. And there's like 2 to 3 different lines through this long right-hand carousel. It's difficult to get the balance out, and it's difficult to get the pace out of the cars consistently lap out after lap.
Yes, indeed, and we'll have to see how the drivers deal with that one as they come through with the kink on this relatively long pace lap here, Randy. And what is it with Americans and corners that don't really exist? Yeah, labeled.
We like to count to higher numbers, is the problem. So it's going to be an interesting run here as they currently take themselves down into Canada Corner after exiting through the Kettle Bottoms into Canada Corner, then of course through Thunder Valley and Bill Mitchell Bend. And that's one of the things about this racetrack, Connery. There's a lot of places where you can run side by side into these racetracks, but there's a couple stretches where you have to single file it out. Turn 5 to about turn 8 is one of those areas, and then this last sector here is another place where you really want to be single file. It can be scary going through this section of the racetrack side by side.
Yeah, it would be very scary, and more importantly, it loses you time to your competitors in front and allows the people behind to catch back up as we come up to the last corner. Right now, it's going to be a little bit of an uphill stretch to the start-finish line, but the pace car will pull in any time.
Pace car takes the right-hand turn onto pit road here, and Ricardo Castrolado gets on the gas early up this uphill front straightaway, and that's going to bring the green out for 40 minutes here at Road America in these GT3 cars. We already have 3 wide in the back. That's Riley Preston, Ender Rodriguez, and Timo Ivinen. No, be careful, boys. You don't want to force an issue 3 wide into turn 1 here at Road America. I think Timo will likely lift out of this. No, they're going to force it 3 wide into corner number 1. What's going to happen? Grabowski gets in the back of Riley Preston. 2 cars run out wide. That's Rodriguez and Timo Ivinen. A little bit at a very aggressive start here. Alexia Loma slots in behind them.
Yeah, Evelyn got a very, very good start as we see some 2 wide fighting near the front of the field. There is Melikaka and Denis Grabowski. They're fighting for 4th position on the racetrack. Denis Grabowski is up 4 places already. What a start.
And look at the gap that your leaders have gotten because of that 3 wide fighting amongst your third and fourth, the second row on the grid. Ricardo Castrolado and Frederick Rasmussen out to a very comfortable advantage as they run up into corner number 6. Riley Preston as well, he got a little bit of a tap from Denis Grabowski going into corner number 1. However, he has himself a comfortable gap over Denis Grabowski in third, and Riley's not been having the greatest
reckon behind there, Randy, it's Heredia, number 19 car. He gets it very, very, very loose there. I believe we can have a replay of that one. But he was too wide with Timo Ivinen, and he just gets on the curb there. The car just doesn't like it at all, just wiggles about and just collects another car there. I believe that was Alexia Loma in that Ford GT.
And some other contacts as well, and you're right, Alexia Loma in that Ford GT does have damage. Note there's also another Ford of Jan Sendkowski, so Couple Fords out here. I've seen one Audi and a few BMWs, but mostly Mercedes out here tonight as they work themselves now into the kink here for the first time. Your leaders are already through the kink and already getting ready to hit the braking zone at Canada Corner. So the gaps, because of these incidents, are really starting to grow. We saw last week, Connery, at Le Mans, that essentially it was very difficult to break away. Rocco Barone was able to do so extraordinarily early. However, here it's the exact opposite. The entire field getting spread out because of those early incidents. We have a spinner, Miko Milkilla, through Bill Mitchell Bend into the final corner. He spins around, and who did he collect? It was Timo Ivinen. Timo's now, I believe that's 3 incidents in the space of 1 lap, and he surely will probably have to hit pit road for repairs. No, he's going to go around another time.
Yeah, he's going to have to struggle that car around. That is very, very heavy front end damage to that Mercedes AMG GT3. He'll just have to limp it around a lap here. I'm not sure why he didn't come in that time by. Maybe he doesn't have a meatball flag and can continue, but I'd rather pit that if I were him.
Yeah, I definitely agree. That was a hard hit, hitting that other Mercedes that it was spinning out in front of them. Ricardo Ferreira able to slip by Timo due to the top speed advantage, and that's where I think Timo's really going to be hurting. Even if the handling of that car is okay, it has significant aerodynamic damage, and just looking behind as they come off corner number 3, it's already 6, 7, 8 miles an hour quicker is that car behind, and with the draft it's going to be even more so. Timo pulls over to the left. I think he's just going to let him go. Yeah, that's Andrew Rodriguez in that number 4 machine. He lets him go. Alexia Loma also making moves on a yellow Mercedes. Who's that in the yellow? That's Dado Opkek. He's going to actually sprint away from Alexia Loma. Actually, does Opkak make the move? Aloma loses another spot to Segwick, the NX Racing driver. So one NX driver, Timo Ivinen, struggles. Jack Segwick starting to pick up spots.
Indeed he is, and I believe that was just Alexia Loma just missing his braking point just a little bit coming down into turn 5. That just made him push wide. He did try around the outside of Dado Opkak. That move was obviously unsuccessful, but Opkak running well so far. And just running down your leaders. Castellito is still in the lead there, but he's Fredrik Rasmussen not too far away, so we should be having a good fight for the lead throughout the race.
Yeah, that's the closest gap out there on the racetrack. It's about half a second as they get ready to hit the braking zone into Canada Corner, and it looks to me like Frederick closes up on the brakes just a little bit, so maybe running a little bit more wing in that Core Sim racing machine than Ricardo Castelletto. We'll have to see what the top speeds are this next time around, but a pretty big gap by your leaders here. Let's run down your top 5. It's Ricardo Castro leads to Frederick Rasmussen. Behind, Riley Preston continues to have a good run, and a good run he deserves considering some of the luck he's had. Then you did get Dennis Grabowski in the McLaren, Zach Thomas in a Merc, and then Ricardo Ferreira, Andrew Rodriguez, Dado Opkak, Timo Ivinen, and Jack Segwick, I believe, round out your top 10. We need to get the positions updated here once they come across the stripe, because there were a lot of changes for position over the course of that lap. And I guessed correctly, Jack Segwick also moving around Timo Ivinen. Not really surprised about that. Those are 2 NX drivers. Timo obviously not going to fight with Jack too hard considering the damage he has.
No, it's pretty much a try not to lose as many spots as you can for Timo Räikkönen right now. And yeah, I'm surprised he didn't come in that time by. Maybe that damage is not terminal in the eyes of the steward, so he doesn't have to come in and get repaired. But there's a long train of cars currently just outside your top 10. That is from Jorge Valls there, just being followed by Alexia Loma, and there's just a huge train of cars behind them, so they're all just sitting in the draft, just drafting off each other as they come down into turn 5. Alexia Loma very, very deep on the brakes, gets right onto the back of Valls there, but also look behind, there's Akunto as well behind Alexia Loma, so this is shaping up to be a great fight.
Yeah, it's a huge train of cars here. Just did a quick count. There's 13 cars in this train, and I think if you're Timo Ivinen, who's currently heading it, you're going to have yourself getting freight trained here very, very quickly, because where that car is losing all its speed is down these front straightaways. It's about 5 to 6 miles per hour off the likes of all the other Mercedes behind it, and that's just not draft. That's just purely the amount of aero damage he has. So here very quickly, he's going to have Jorge Valls to deal with. Alexia Loma will want to slip by. Marco Acunto, Janovicio, Jan Santowski, Julian Heredia, Marcus Meyer, all of those guys, once they see that door open, they're going to want to come through. And I think that Timo is going to have to be very patient with how he runs this race, given the fact that he has this damage. He doesn't want to fight too hard with these guys, because if he fights with them and he's able to hold them off for a while, they're eventually going to get impatient, and Timo's day could go from bad to worse.
Indeed, and that's exactly not what he wants. He's already got a huge amount of damage. He definitely doesn't want any more, or have to retire the car, of course. But yeah, just coming onto the pit straight now. They're just coming out of turn 14, which is your last corner here in Road America. He will be helped by the draft somewhat of Jack Sedgwick, but he will be dropping off pretty quickly from that car ahead. As we see, just Vals, look at that, look at the closing speed. That's not just draft, that is just aero damage as well from Timo Ivonen. He's a sitting duck on the straights.
And he's getting out of the way of all these cars. He lets 3 cars slip by. Marco Agunto, Aloma, and of course Jorge Valls, all able to slip through going into corner number 1. Junio Vichio, he got a little bit of a hiccup coming through corner number 1, so he's not going to get to Timo just yet. Timo, I think, will be able to hold on to this, what will now be 13th position as they run down into corner number, technically corner number 3, corner number 5, whatever you want to call it. But behind Jana Vichio, he has his mirrors full of a Ford of Jansen Towski and a Mercedes of Julian Heredia. They're too wide behind him. The Ford's kind of blocked with where he can make a move, but is that Mercedes of Guillaume going to try to make a move around the outside? He breaks late, but he's not going to quite be able to get it. He's going to hold off the Ford, though, and I believe that's going to be a change for position. Yes, it is. Julian Heredia moving himself up 1 spot on Janssen Kelsey. Marcus Meyer continues to just stalk behind in his Merc as well.
Yes, great move by Heredia on the outside of turn 5, and he might have a little bit of a look on Vecchio on the outside, yet again coming down into this left-hander, but does not make it work this time as he gets the back end out. Oh, that was very, very close.
That's a bit of a scary place to try to force it too wide there through that left-hander. You can make moves there, but honestly, I'm of the opinion that if you're going to be trying to make a move around the outside of that 90-degree left, you're better off just keeping yourself single file, because you just lose yourself more time. Because, I mean, we know that Timo Ivonen has damage, and Timo Ivonen has stretched the gap here over Yanaviccio and Guillaume Heredia over this lap. So that kind of shows how much time you can lose just fighting with each other too hard. Sometimes, Connery, it goes against your racing instincts. Your racing instincts tell you to push hard, throw the car up the inside, on the outside, wherever you see a gap. However, when it comes to reeling other cars in, you're a lot of times, more often than not, better just sticking yourself single file, remaining smart about how you're racing, because that way you don't force gaps to form. Because if they hadn't been fighting like that, as Timo Ivonen, I think, is now coming in to serve that black flag, remember you have 3 laps to serve it, I think that, that gap that they now have to Marco Acunto wouldn't have formed if they were had fought each other less.
Yes, indeed, as we see some 2-wide action between Vecchio and Heredia. Heredia in that number 19 car. He's going to try and make it around the outside of turn 1. That is a very, very good move if he can hold it. He doesn't get a very good exit, though, and Vecchio can counterattack on the outside coming down into turn 3. And no, this contact just gives him a little bit of a tap on the rear. No harm done, though, as Heredia just gets it a little bit sideways coming out of turn 3 there. But amazing racing here, and we see Senkowski as well in that Ford GT. He's going to have a little bit of a double draft here coming down into turn 5. Oh, and he just gets blocked a little bit there by Vecchio coming across to try on the outside down into turn 5 as they go 2 by 2 through turn 5. This is amazing.
The draft here in these GT3 machines means you have all these cars jockeying for a position. Sometimes you want to make a move, but there'll just be a car in the way because that car will be defending from someone else. Alexi Aloma has his mirror full of Marco Acunto. I think Alexi losing having a similar situation to Timo Ivonen. He's got a lot of damage on the front end of that Ford, and that'll likely hurt him mostly in the top end. However, not as much damage as Timo does. Obviously not getting a black flag, and the pace isn't that much different. Looking back out front, Frederick Rasmussen has sort of just held steady on Ricardo Castroleto. That gap 4/10 last time they came across the stripe. Might be a little closer this time, but if so, not very much. Riley Preston in third has fallen off the leader, Ricardo Castroleto, by 3 seconds. So he remains just sort of out there on an island of his own. Dennis Grabowski in fourth, with Zach Thomas rounding out your top 5. And it's important to note that Dennis, at least last time by, was not reeling in Riley Preston. And actually, another important thing to note here, Connery, is that in this championship, one of the other things they changed was the rate at which some of these cars burn fuel. So the McLarens and the Audis were previously extraordinarily good on their fuel economy, but in this update they increased the fuel consumption just a little bit. Because of that, Grabowski won't have the advantage in the pit stops that we've seen him have over the course of several races this season.
Yes, indeed. So they should be much more equal now with that change, as we see a little bit of battling between the 28 and the 18. The 28 of Jan Sinkowski, he's going to have to try and hang it around the outside down into turn 1. Mayer just holding that inside in that Mercedes AMG GT3 with the 4GT all over the back of him. Sinkowski, he looks like the fastest car of these two, but he just can't seem to find a way past yet.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. Looking back out towards the front, it seems like Frederick Rasmussen has closed up on the back of Ricardo Castrolado as they currently run into corner number 9 and then down through the hurry downs here at Road America in this tight left-hander. Something's happening with the 18. The production crew's yelling at me. This is Marcus Meyer. They're side by side into corner number 5. Marcus Meyer on the inside of Jen Santowski. Santowski is the one trying to make the move here on the right side through this left-hander under the Corvette bridge, and Marcus Meyer going to be able to defend for now, but this is just stacking up this whole train of cars behind him, Connery.
Yes, indeed, and then we saw Joni Häkkinen well, he actually defended his place there, but he also was involved in a little bit of fighting down at turn 5 while Senkowski and Meyer were also battling, so they've gone 2 by 2 through turn 5 at least twice in this race so far. Maybe we'll see a little bit more of as they come through the carousel. Senkowski just trying to sit in that draft of Marcus Meyer as they come through the kink, but he's also got Jake Hewlett right behind him. He gained a lot during the kink there. Maybe he can make a move down to Canada corner, but I fear he'll be too far back.
Into Canada corner. Doesn't look like anyone's really close enough to make any moves, but Jake Hewlett, he's going to harass the mirrors of that 4GT in front of him, just sort of dip out and then dip right back into line, letting Jen Santowski know that he's there and that he tends to move up forward through this field, and that orange Mercedes is looking racy. And look at the way he gets a run through Bill Mitchell Bend. He again slots it towards the inside, going into the final corner, and that forces Santowski into a mistake. This is exactly what Hewlett was trying to do, harassing the mirrors like that, and now he's got an opportunity to maybe make a pass happen. He's got a little bit of a gap to Marcus Meyer out in front, and that's what he wants, because it means the Ford will have less of that draft. Side by side across the stripe and going into corner number 1, about to be hard on the brakes here and then down into third gear. That orange Mercedes of Jake Hewlett down on the inside into corner number 1, move him up a position, but that Ford's trying to work the cutback on the exit of 1. Coming now into corner number 3, and now you slot Jen Santowski on the inside, but no, he makes his back single file. Jake Hewlett has that spot cleared, and now he sets his sights on Marcus Meyer up ahead.
Yes, that's a great move by Hewlett there, but look at this, Senkowski back in the draft. This is how the draft can be a huge equalizer here. Senkowski is going to have a look on the outside, coming down into turn 5 right now. Will he make the move stick? Oh, he goes a little bit too deep on the brakes, just gets on the curb. Now he's under threat from Häkkinen as well. Häkkinen's going to be on the inside for turn 6.
And that's really the struggle you can get yourself into at this racetrack, Connery, is that you get those long straights, and actually that 4GT of Santowski is going to push wide through that uphill left-hander and now through the right-hander. He gets himself slotted in front of Felipe Paiva. That's sort of what the trouble you can get yourself into. You can work that draft, you'll slot in, and then you'll be like, oh, I need to make a move here, and you'll simply get yourself too eager. You'll push yourself too hard on the brakes, and yes, these GT3 cars do have ABS, but you also have this situation in these GT3 cars where, especially in that downhill braking section at turn number 5, if you find yourself panic braking, that car will still just essentially plow forward, which is exactly what we saw Santowski deal with.
Yes, of course, and look at how much gap he's now lost to the cars that he was battling with. That was just a failed move on Jake Hewlett coming down into turn 5. He got that wrong and just went too deep on the brakes, allowed Häkkinen to stick his nose in there, and then he had some trouble coming out of turn 6 as well, which lost him even more time. So Senkowski just has to settle down right now as he gets on the curb, just coming to the latter end of the lap here. He doesn't seem very happy in that 4GT right now.
Yeah, I think there's a good chance he may have overworked those tires just a little bit. About here at this racetrack at Road America, most of the corners are right-handers, and a lot of those right-handers put the tires under an immense amount of stress. Because of that, you will burn off the left front because there's going to be so much weight pushed on the left side or on those left side tires. So there is the chance that Jan Santowski has maybe overpushed those tires just a little bit. We're going to have to wait and see. Right now we're expecting ourselves about 4 to 5 laps away from your first round of pit stops. Looking back out front, and that gap from the leaders still remains. Frederick Rasmussen, I honestly think, in this draft is likely just sitting and saving fuel on Ricardo Castrolado. It looks like a relatively comfortable gap for Castrolado at the moment, but I honestly think we're going to see a change of position there once the pit stops happen. Riley Preston continues to run comfortably in third. The PRT driver, at least I'm guessing by the skin, Dennis Grabowski, comfortably in fourth, with Zach Thomas rounding out the top 5. Opcac still having his mirrors full of Andrew Rodriguez, and he's actually, Opcac is starting to reel in Ricardo Ferrari as they work themselves into the carousel.
Yeah, Randy, I think you're absolutely right when it comes to Frederick Rasmussen. We know exactly how fast he is in these GT3 cars. We've seen it throughout the first part of this season, and it's likely that he's just lifting off a little bit in the draft, just saving a little bit of fuel so that he can get ahead in the pit stops, have a shorter pit stop, and then just get ahead and then fly at the end of this race. But we'll have to wait and see for that one. Pit stop's just a couple of minutes away, I should suspect. But yes, looking down your field, Ferreira and Opcac, as you say, they are getting very, very close together on track. I wonder if this will spark some sort of fight, as Ferrari just goes a little bit wide on the penultimate corner as they come through turn 14 now. Opcac will obviously have the draft coming up the pit straight, and we have some trouble with Jack Sedgwick. That number 15 car, he's on the grass and had a little bit of a roll, I believe.
Let's see what happened to that 15 car. Jack Sedgwick, oh yeah, that was a big incident from him. Got that car a little bit loose through Bill Mitchell Bend, almost had it caught, over-rotated, caught the car, hit the wall, backed it into the wall, and that car rolled. So that's now 2 NX Racing machines that have had big trouble here at Road America, and I think Jack's car is a lot more hurt than Timo Evenen was. When you back the car into the wall like that, it does a lot of damage. And actually, who's that? That's Dan Herron. He decided to come down pit road a little bit early, and that was extraordinarily unfortunately timed. We're still on the replay of that incident, but Dan Herron almost running into the back of Sedgwick just because Sedgwick's crabbing with all the damage in that car. He chose a very poor time to come down pit road. I don't think he expected Sedgwick to be that far off the pace.
Yeah, and I don't think Inex's luck has gotten much better since the GT Series, that final race where Inex got involved in an incident that pretty much ruined their championship hopes. I'm sure you remember that one, Randy.
Yeah, I definitely do. NX Racing Yellow, of course, about 4 laps in to that 3-hour race at the Nürburgring, getting caught up in an incident with Thrustmaster Mervano. But that NX Racing Red machine did have a fantastic race at the Nürburgring, coming home with a strong 3rd-place finish. And actually, Jack Sedgwick put on a great show in that machine on the old tires, considering the situations all around him. Looking back out towards your leaders, it still holds at about 0.6 of a second between Castrolato in the Radicals Mercedes and Frederick Rasmussen in the Core Mercedes into Canada corner. And we've seen one pit stop from Dan Herron here just this past time around. That's going to be a little bit early. I don't expect most of your cars to come down around that point. Going to be lap 11, lap 12-ish. You can do the early pit stop though if you think if you're in traffic and you think people are holding you up. It can actually be wise to get that pit stop out of the way. So if you're maybe in a pack like Jake Hewlett, Joni Häkkinen, Jensen Kowski was, although that pack has gotten a lot more spread out, you can definitely come down pit road and try to maybe work the strategy of those guys racing each other hard will spread themselves out. But you also run the risk of the strategy of, well, the draft could just work in their favor. So it's definitely a big risk to take part in. I think most of our pit stops will be happening though in about 2 to 3 laps time.
Yes, as we see Guillaume Escuder Heredia, he is in the pits for an early stop right there. So he is perhaps one of the first ones to blink, as we also see Chip Desharoon. He's in from the near the back of the field as well. So some of your drivers, they are coming in already. So the pit window is most certainly open.
Yeah, the pit window is open. So some people coming down and taking their earlier pit stops. Alexia Loma in the NX Racing Mercedes continuing to hound the back of Jorge Blanco Valls, or excuse me, not the NX Racing Mercedes, the NX Racing Ford GT. There's too many Mercedes, Connery, I'm getting confused, but Jorge Valls going into corner number 5. Alexi still not closing up on the draft. I think that Ford has a considerable amount of aero damage.
Yeah, he's not doing that well in the straights, but he still follows very, very closely to Valls there coming up to turn 6. So he can close up during the corners, but on the straight and on the long straights in particular, coming towards the end of them, he just doesn't have the speed because of that aero damage. But he's actually doing very well to hold what is a top 10 place currently.
Yeah, he's running very strong is what he's doing out there. Ricardo Castrolato actually has done a good job to stretch the gap on Frederick Rasmussen, as it looks to me. The timing says it's to come down, but I think Fred made a mistake sometime over the course of this lap to bring that gap back out. Last time around, Fred was about 0.3 of a second quicker, so likely a mistake somewhere on the lap to bring that time back out. We're going to have to see what the the gap is when they come across the stripe. This is going to end lap number 10, essentially put us at halfway here in this motor race. And actually, again, Frederick Rasmussen pushing through that final corner. And the thing is, Connor, with that mistake, understeering through that corner, not getting the rotation, getting a bad exit, he's going to be hemorrhaging time to Castelletto all the way down this super long front straightaway.
Yeah, just look at that. He lost about 7 or 8 tenths of a second in that lap alone. That gap is now 0.943 seconds at that time around, and it's just gone up to about 0.97 on the relative timings as well. So Rasmussen is hemorrhaging time a little bit here. Maybe you have to think now about pit stopping.
Yeah, certainly might have. We talked about the fact that at this racetrack you can abuse those front tires a lot, and my first race of the week I actually ran into that issue, didn't really adjust my pressures, and towards the end of the first race I was really fighting the understeer. It's possible that Frederick Rasmussen might be having himself in the same situation. We know that he's not overly fond of this Mercedes, and he didn't really drive it a lot on the previous build. Mostly drove the Ford, the McLaren. We saw him, I believe, in an Audi at one point, and he definitely drove that BMW to great success. And including having a fantastic run at the Nürburgring in your Blancpain GT World Championship finale. But the Mercedes is a bit heavier, and even though the two cars share a bit of characteristics, Connery, with the fact that it is heavier, you have to play a little bit nicer with it with the tires.
Yep, exactly. Those tires won't be happy with the additional weight that the Mercedes AMG has. And I'm just looking at the front of Frederick Rasmussen's car right now. He has a very little bit of minor damage to the front of the car, just to the top left-hand side of the Mercedes badge. The bonnet is split open just a little bit. That will affect him a little bit in terms of aero, but not too much, I don't think. But as they come down into Canada corner right now, it's going to be the first of who blinks here.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. Talking about that damage on the front of Rasmussen's car, there are some curbs here at Road America that you can hit and get yourself a little bit of front-end damage. However, to me, that looks mostly cosmetic, and I honestly don't think it's what's causing Rasmussen's issues, because especially where we've been seeing him making mistakes has been through the slower corners. Castelletto hits pit road, and Rasmussen hits pit road as well. So this is where we're gonna see, Connery. Are the strategies different enough, and has Rasmussen been saving gas? Looks like everyone's coming down the pit load. Opcat goes an extra net lap, and that could be big because that's a long lap here, and that's a considerable amount of fuel he'll be able to save. Jorge Valls hit pit road. Loma in. Acunto in. Jarno Vicio coming in by the looks of things. Hewlett coming in. Looks like everybody coming in. No, Joni Häkkinen is going to stay out for another lap. Felipe Paiva comes in. Riviera's coming through the final corner. That's going to take us through your top 17. So 15 of your top 17
Randy,
or
I think Lado slid his box a little bit. He had to back up just a little bit. That might surrender the lead to Rasmussen.
Let's see, how much did he have to back up? It was just a little bit. It wasn't a lot. It was about a foot.
Yeah, Rasmussen's out first and Castelletto out next. So look at that gap as well. Rasmussen has absolutely aced that pit stop right there. Look how much of a gap he's built up already.
Definitely a good gap. I'm actually curious, though, looking at Fred Rasmussen as he came out of the pit lane. He's a little bit more aggressive, I think, on the pit lane than what normally allows you to Road America. Anyone that's raced here knows that pit exit can be very strict with how much you're able to run, but by the looks of things, he didn't cross the yellow line, so Rasmussen should be okay. And look at that gap, Connery. That little mistake, I honestly think Fred was likely saving gas throughout that first stint. It's just that little mistake has, really stretched the gap out more than what it should be. But what is that? I'd say that's at least about a second to a second and a half, if not more, that Rasmussen has over Castelletto out of the pit stop.
Yep, exactly, and I think also Rasmussen, on the entry to pit road, he was much better on the brakes as Castelletto, because he only gained about 0.7, I'd say, of a second on the pit stop, but he managed to gain around about 2.5 seconds in the pit lane, so that more than explains the gap there.
Absolutely right. Now we need to keep an eye on your two people who did not hit the pit lane that time around. That was Dado Opkak and Joni Häkkinen. Dado Opkak currently going through Bill Mitchell Bend and into the final corner. We're expecting Opkak down pit road this time by, as well as Joni Häkkinen, but that's a considerable gap. Häkkinen going into Canada corner, and just for reference, Frederick Rasmussen, who's already pitted, is on the run into Canada corner as well. Opkak hits the pit lane, and this is going to be interesting. I don't think he's going to have enough time saved to be able to jump your leaders, but he might be able to either A, get himself a comfortable gap on the cars he was racing before, or maybe even reel someone in he was racing with who was up the road.
Yes, indeed, as we see that Cup coming through pit lane down into his pit box. We've also got the driver of Joni Häkkinen. He also stayed out that one extra lap as well, trying to get a little bit more of an advantage. Whereas Frederick Magnussen, he's just coming across the line, and so is Riccardo Castrioletto. Riley Preston will also be there as well, so they wouldn't get the jump on these guys, but as you see Dennis Grabowski coming through, Simon Fiegel, he is a lap down. Zach Thomas, he might be under threat here with the cars coming out of pit lane. Let's see what happens here. Zach Thomas, yep, he's going to be end up being behind that Opcat.
A good move by Opcock there. I believe he's behind Thomas going into the pit stop, and judging by that gap, that looks about right, but actually I'm not quite sure. Might have to go and check that. Riccardo Castrioletto from Frederick Rasmussen, Connery, 1.8 seconds is the gap between Rasmussen and Castrioletto as they come across the stripe. And considering that Castrioletto was about 3 to 4 tenths ahead at the pit stop, that means Castrioletto hemorrhaged about 2 to 2.5 seconds in that pit lane.
Yep, and that's what we say in racing. The race can be won and lost in the pit lane, and that is just one example of it. Of course, we're not at the end of the race yet. We've got about 13 minutes and 17 seconds of the race to go, but that looks like a mountain to climb for Castrioletto right now.
That's going to be a huge gap that he has to try to reel in, and we talked about that maybe Fred was struggling on the tires with the fact that he had a couple of those understeer moments, and that's really what that's what I felt when I burned the front tires off in these Mercs, so that's kind of what we're assuming what it was. Either that or it was just a plain and simple mistake by Rasmussen just overdriving the car. And if you're Riccardo Castrioletto, you're hoping that Fred is having those problems, because that's the only way you're going to be able to reel in this gap over this next 6 or 7 laps to OP Freddy.
Yes, of course. As we see someone drop down the field, that is Heredia with some technical issues, we believe. But yes, we have Frederick Rasmussen right now. He's almost stretched that relative gap up to about 2 seconds right now. But Riccardo Castrioletto, actually, last time by, he was just a fraction of a second faster.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. Right now we're watching the 24 and the 20. That's Jano Vicchio and Joni Häkkinen. Joni, remember, one of the drivers who went that extra lap. So he might be on a slightly lighter car than Jano Vicchio out here in front. That could give him just a little bit of an advantage right now as they work themselves into Bill Binchel Bend and into the final corner as they work down now into the final corner. And it's going to be who gets the better run out of this, Connery, because looking to me, actually, I think that I might give the advantage to Joni Häkkinen. Between the drafts, I think Jani Vicchio and that number 24 Mercedes, that Sim RCDE machine, he's going to have his hands full with Häkkinen. Now they come across the stripe side by side. Yenio holding to the left side of the circuit. I think he knows that the jig is up. That number 20 machine, I think, will certainly slot himself up a spot.
Yep, that Black Star Racing GT3 car, just getting that pass done on Gianni Vecchio in that Mercedes AMG right there as well is a very good move coming down into turn 1. Can Vecchio reply? I don't think so. Häkkinen got a very, very good run out of turn 3 there. I don't think Vecchio will be close enough, but although saying that, he is closing up. Let's see what happens.
Looking out towards front as that battle continuing to pick up between Vecchio as well as Häkkinen as they work themselves into corner number 5. Häkkinen a little bit loose on the exit there, but Vecchio actually ran a little bit wide, so not able to capitalize on that slight mistake. Behind, remember, these guys were part of that 5-car train at one point, and that gap behind, and the whole train, the whole train is basically broken up, I think, with the pit stops, Connery, but Vecchio trying to reel in Joni, but I think Joni's simply too quick. Out in front last time across the stripe, 1.9 seconds the advantage to Frederick Rasmussen from Riccardo Castrioletto. Riley Preston still comfortably in 3rd, Grabowski comfortably 4th, Opkak in 5th, Zach Thomas 6th, 7th Ferreira, Andrew Rodriguez 8th, 9th is Alexio Loma, and your top 10 Marco Diacunto rounding out your top 10. Pretty much all of our battles here, Connery, has gotten themselves settled. Joni Häkkinen has already stretched a gap over Vecchio. At this point, it's essentially trying to reel in a gap and making sure you don't make a mistake in the process of doing so.
Yep, speaking of reeling in a gap, though, that gap from Riccardo Castrioletto to your leader is down 0.2 of a second. 2 or 3 tenths of a second, actually, down to 1.642 seconds. So Riccardo Castrioletto, he is catching here. Will it be enough before the end of the race, though?
2 to 3 tenths per lap, roughly about 5 laps remaining in this race, and that puts Ricardo Castrolado roughly in the window to be able to reel in Frederick Rasmussen. So this is going to have to be what we watch. Frederick has to be perfect every single lap. Ricardo has to be more perfect every single lap. As they go into corner number 5, looks like Ricardo actually closes that gap on the brakes. Coming off the corner, it seems like it stretches out back towards the way of Frederick, though. Under the Corvette bridge and over through this tricky left-hander at the top of this hill, the gap pretty much stays stagnant. So where do you think it is that Castrolado is making up that time, Connery, as Frederick actually runs wide through that right-hander?
I think Ricardo Castrolado is actually just making less mistakes at this point, because you just saw that Frederick Rasmussen just ran a little bit wide. He's also been missing a few apexes as we look at the 7 and the 8 car. That is Alexia Loma and Acunto. Acunto is going to look down towards the inside of turn 6. They're going to go too wide through there, but Alexia Loma manages to defend the position.
That's a hard place to make passes, going underneath that Corvette bridge. Even if you're on the inside, it's such an awkward corner, Connery, because the road, I mean, even if you have all the racetrack, the road is very, very narrow. And especially if you have a car around you, oftentimes that outside is actually where you want to be, because then you'll have that apex of that next right-hander, which is really what I think matters. So not surprised to see that pass didn't go the way of Marco Acunto, and Alexi Loma continues to have his mirror full of that Mercedes behind him. Let's monitor out front just a little bit as they come off the final corner. I think that gap's come down even more, Connery, over the course of this lap. I think it's going to be down to 1.3, 1.4 seconds as they come across the stripe. 1.3 seconds is the gap now, so another 3 tenths goes the way of Ricardo Castrolado. I think Frederick Rasmussen is having troubles with tires, definitely, with the way that this gap keeps coming down. We haven't seen this from Frederick any of the races this season. When he drove the Ford, when he drove the McLaren, when he drove the BMW, he was always one of the quickest drivers over the course of the run. We at no point ever saw him lose this much time this late in the race.
Yes, exactly, and I was watching the relative times very, very closely during that last lap, and I was just watching that time tumble as, again, he just dips below, well, he's into the 1.1 seconds now, that gap is, so Castrolado will be feeling the tail end of that draft, not as very significant amount, but every little helps here as we come through to the closing stages of this race, and this is, if it keeps going as is, and Ricardo Castrolado can catch up, this will be an amazing end to the race.
And especially, Connery, every single time, you know, he gets closer and closer, and the closer he gets, he's going to be getting more and more of that draft from that Core Sim Racing Mercedes driven by Frederick Rasmussen. Because of that, the closer he gets, the bigger effect that's going to have.
Oh yeah, definitely, but you have to wonder if there's enough time left for Ricardo Castrolado to one catch up, which I think he'll have enough time, but passing is another story. Both these drivers are absolutely amazing in terms of their racecraft, so this should be a fun fight, but we've got about 6 minutes and 30 seconds remaining. It's going to be a close one.
Yeah, not a lot of time left in this motor race at all. About 6 minutes actually as they go into Canada Corner, and actually this is going to be interesting because this is going to give us about 3 laps left to go here, so we're going to end this race either on lap 19 or lap 20, not quite sure. We're going to get that count a little bit closer here as they work themselves into the final corner, and I think that gap, Connery, got stretched out just a little bit. I think Fred did a great job through that last sector. It was 1.2 seconds at the line. Let's see what it's going to be this time. Doesn't feel like the gaps come down nearly as much. You see Frederick swerving back and forth, trying to break that draft, and as they come across the stripe, the gap comes down to 1 second even. So still, the advantage went to Castrolado, but it wasn't as much of a gain as we've seen in the past couple laps. The 25, the 22, and the 29 continue to fight hard. This is Chip Disharoon, Tanner Basol, and Dan Heron.
Yep, that's Basol just trying to chase down Chip Disharoon there as they come through the kink. Basol goes very, very wide out of the kink, but manages to collect it. They're on the run down towards Canada Corner right now. It's very tricky braking zone. It's very easy to clip that left-hand side grass and just have the car just really, really not like it. The car just gets very unsettled when you do that. But yeah, this is a great fight happening down in the lower end of your field, but a great fight nonetheless.
Great three-way scrap as they work themselves into the final corner, and actually Chip Disharoon is going to have his mirror full of Canada Basol as they come off this final corner. Are going to be getting all sorts of draft. Note that the next car in front, Julian Offred, I believe is the lone Audi. He's got himself well clear of this battle, and actually the draft starting to kick in for Canada Basol. Is he going to make the move here? Chip defends to the inside, and Canada's going to go around. He's going to try to force it around the long way. into corner number 1. Doesn't brake late enough. He's going to slot in behind.
Yep, good attempted pass there by Bassel, but Disharun just defending the inside very competently there as they come down through turn 3. Dan Heron will stick his nose in on the inside of Bassel there a little bit, but Bassel shuts the door. Heron had a very good run coming out of turn 1, just stuck his nose in there, but wasn't able to make the pass complete as they run down into turn 5 now.
An aggressive move that didn't work out, and because of that, Connery, he's tried to make that move stick, and look at the way that that gap stretched out as they went into corner number 3. Not nearly as close. And looking back towards the lead battle, I think Frederick Rasmussen has either done a fantastic job or Ricardo Castrolato has dropped off over that lap. It doesn't look like it's come down nearly at all, and in fact I actually think that Frederick Rasmussen has stretched the gap here on Ricardo Castrolato. As they come across the stripe, what's the time? 3 minutes 50 remaining on the clock, so 2 laps to go here, and the gap between the leaders as they come across, 1.081 seconds, so even as they come across the line, but Rasmussen just about 1 to 2 hundredths quicker over the course of that lap. Castrolato needs to find something. He needs to push hard to find it.
Yeah, he needs perfection in every single one of his corners now. He has to hit every single braking marker, hit every single apex, hit every single track out point if he wants this race win. He'll have the benefit of the draft, however small it is at this distance, but he has to do so much more than just have the draft to take this race win.
Into corner number 5, Frederick Rasmussen goes, definitely monitoring the mirrors, monitoring the gap to that Radical Steel Series machine behind of Ricardo Castrolato. Out of corner number 5, under the Corvette bridge and into 6. The awkward left-hander at the top of the hill, with that curb on the left, feels a lot larger than it actually is. Into this right-hander that's very narrow, and I think Ricardo, has found a little bit of time through this sector of the track. Seems to have come down just that little bit. Riley Preston continues to run cleanly behind. Dennis Grabowski is still trying to reel him in, but Riley has been quicker. Into the carousel, that gap has come down quite a bit, and the thing is, Connery, this part of the racetrack, this is where Ricardo Castrolato will be getting aero push as opposed to a draft.
Yeah, it's exactly the same as you see in the Indy cars and, of course, the Formula 1 cars. Perhaps not as significant in these cars, but it is an effect that you do feel through the wheels. We see some battling going on with Alexia Lohman in that number 7 Ford GT and Jorge Valles as well in that number 16 car as well. They've been having a little bit of fight. Häkkinen is also in that group as well, so...
And Häkkinen last time around, half a second quicker than those drivers of Alexia Loma and Jorge Valles. So this is going to be a fantastic last lap, 3-way scrap. So we have 2 fights to watch, the fight for the win and the fight for the tail end of the top 10. And Frederick Rasmussen comes off the final corner.
Yeah, and we will see what that gap is this time by. I believe it will be a reduced gap, but I don't think it'll be enough for Ricardo Castrolato at this stage in the race. He comes across the line, and the gap will be 0.891 seconds. He is catching, but I don't think it'll be enough, and I think this is the last lap, Randy.
White flag is in the air, and 3/10 to the way of Ricardo Castrolato that final time as they go on the run under the Briggs and Stratton Bridge and into corner number 3, monitoring that fight for 10th place here on the racetrack. Alexia Loma has his mirrors full of Jorge Valles and Joni Häkkinen while trying to reel in some of the cars out in front. Down this long second straightaway, though, for your leaders goes Rasmussen and Ricardo Castrolato. Lato's not close enough yet, so the move won't happen here. Aloma working the draft the best as he can to the drivers behind. Jorge Valles isn't going to poke it up the inside, and neither is Häkkinen. Häkkinen looked, but he just thinks better of it. Out of corner number 1, the NX Racing machine of Alexia Loma continues to hold on. Rasmussen and Castrolato. Castro, I think, has brought the gap down a little bit through this middle sector, and this is where he has to be absolutely perfect. Into now the downhill braking for this left-hander before you come into the long right-hander at the carousel. And actually, I think Castrolato may have over-pushed his mark just a little bit going into that left-hander. He was quick in, but I think the gap got stretched back out. Through the carousel, Freddie runs a little bit wide, but so did Ricardo, so they're going to be about even. Alexia Loma got past, though, in the back, though. Alexia Loma got passed by Jorge Valles. Move him up into the 10th spot. Alexi on the outside of the right-hander under the Corvette bridge. A slight touch, but they'll both save it, and they'll slot themselves single file. Out through the kink and down into the run to Canada corner, though. Frederick Rasmussen maintains a comfortable gap to Ricardo Castrolato. Ricardo's there. If he had another lap, I think it might be enough, but I don't think quite yet that Ricardo Castrolato will be able to get this. It's going to take a mistake through Bill Mitchell Bend and into the final corner here at Road America. Frederick, one more braking zone, one more corner, and one more time getting on the throttle, and you can ring him up as your winner in your Blancpain Sprint Series 40 minutes here at Road America. Looking back at your battle now, for the top 10, Alexi Loma. Actually, that gap, Jorge Valls has already stretched out a huge gap. So behind, Joni Häkkinen working the draft on Alexi Loma. Alexi defending on the brakes in the Canada corner. Actually, I think maybe a bit over-aggressive for Alexi there. He cut one way and then he cut back across the nose of that Mercedes of Joni Häkkinen. Through Bill Mitchell Bend for the final time. It goes this now four-way scrap as they come into the final corner. What's Häkkinen going to do? Aero damage on the Ford might be compromising Alexi Loma as they come off this final corner, but it's a better exit for Alexi as they go up the hill at the front straightaway here at Road America. Joni Häkkinen has the draft, but he's not going to be close enough. Alexi Loma will finish in 11th with Joni Häkkinen 12th. Connery, what a final lap.
Yeah, that was absolutely fantastic as we look at the number 23 and the 21 cars. They come across the line here for the bottom end of your top 20 right there. So yeah, that was an absolutely fantastic race. We had a lead change in the pit stops. We had the second place driver catching the leader all the way until that last lap. And I think if Riccardo Castelletto had one or two more laps, he would have been able to make it. But as is the case in racing, you don't get one or two more laps when you really want them.
Looking at the lap times between your leaders that last time around this racetrack, Riccardo Castelletto, a 2:05.8, Frederick Rasmussen, a 2:06.1. So Riccardo was pushing hard on that final lap, and I think you're absolutely right, Connery. 1 to 2 laps more, and then I think he might have gotten it. But first, let's go down into your post-race results from 40 minutes of the Blancpain Sprint Series at Elkhart Lake at Road America. Frederick Rasmussen, OP Freddy, strikes again here in the Mercedes this time. So I believe that's now 4 manufacturers he has notched under his belt in this championship thus far. Riccardo Castelletto comes home in second place after his mistake on pit road cost him enough time for Red to get away. Riley Preston, Dennis Grabowski, third and fourth, with Dado Opkak rounding out your top 5. Zach Thomas finishes in 6th with Ricardo Ferreira 7th, Andrew Rodriguez 8th, Marco Acunto 9th, and Jorge Valls with a fantastic last lap pass on Alexi Loma rounds out your top 10. And Loma, the new NX driver, in 11th, Joni Häkkinen in 12th, Jana Vicio in 13th with Marcus Meyer 14th, Jan Santowski 15th, Jake Hewlett 16th, Christoph Mueller 17th, Felipe Paiva 18th, Efrem Rivera 19th, and Torben Sauthoff rounding out your top 20. Julian Offred 21st, Dan Heron 22nd, Kenner Basal 23rd, Chip Dasharoon 24th, Gilliam Heredia 25th, Simon Fiegel 26th, Jack Sedgwick 27th, Timo Evenin 28th, Miko Milkila 29th, Claudio Pineda in 30th. And Connery, let's talk a little bit, especially for this championship next week. Last 2 rounds we've had a couple tracks with a lot of straights, a lot of high speed, a lot of drafting. Next week, we're going into Suzuka. That's where we're going to see, I think, this balance of performance really get tested as we go to a track that has a much higher focus on mechanical grip and on downforce.
Yep, exactly. It's a very different track indeed from Road America, especially that first sector where you just have a huge amount of sweeping corners up and down that hill. So it's going to be a very interesting race there, Andy.
Indeed, it's going to be. Suzuka, I think, is going to be a big test for these GT3 drivers. But before we go there, the biggest test is happening this weekend. Years of waiting, years of patience, years of desire. We finally got the circuit, and now we have the race. The iRacing 24 Hours of Le Mans happens tomorrow. Watch and tune in as prototypes, GT1s, and GT2s do battle on the famous French circuit for 24 hours, and big teams such as NX, Coanda, Chimera, Phoenix, and probably many more hits the streets of France for 24 hours of racing. Tune in to RaceSpot TV, V8 Online, GSRC. We're going to be providing all the coverage for the full 24 hours of the event. And of course, you have your Global MX Fine Combine Cup happening on Sunday as well. A huge weekend of racing here on RaceSpot TV and iRacing Live. Be sure to tune in to all the coverage, and heck, maybe get out there and compete yourselves. Everyone, have a good evening. See you all tomorrow for the big one. Bye-bye.